Good evening, everyone. For those new to our Facebook page, or if you're rewatching this episode, my name is Avalene Collins, and welcome to what we call the Entrepreneur Corner, where we can just have conversations around entrepreneurship, particularly directed at entrepreneurs. My name is Avalene Collins again. I'm the General Manager for Youth Business Trinidad and Tobago. And the focus for this conversation really is celebrating World Mental Health Day. Right. And, we thought about bringing in who we should bring in to have this conversation. And it just so happened that our guest today spoke to our Jumpstart class. And then we kind of listened to the Jumpstart session itself. And he said, as fate would have it, right? As fate would have it, let's bring Avalene back into the conversation. And celebrate, 1 week later from that conversation and Jumpstart participants, but have that conversation about mental health for entrepreneurs, but also around their team. Because, an entrepreneur is really their own support system sometimes, but sometimes they also manage a team. So, Avalene, welcome.
Thank you.
And first of all, thank you for last week, and thank you for today as well. And I think I want to start the conversation and start the question with, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, as you can hear probably in the background, I'm an avid dog owner. That's just one of my dogs. But my name is Avalene Connelly. Please just call me Avi because it's so much easier. And my background definitely has been in HR for the past 20 years. I started way back in 90s. I want to talk about what 90s.
10 years old, started at 10,
I started when I was really young. But yes, I have always had a very, very keen interest on people and people management and working with people and really bringing people out into their full potential. So I'm really happy to be here. Currently, I work in multifunctional capacity, but HR is part of my remit. And I've also worked with consultants as well. I work full-time, but I've also worked with consultants, but HR is definitely a passion of mine.
Great. So I think as we wanted to take a spin in terms of, from an HR perspective, how do we observe mental health for an entrepreneur looking at the conversations, right? And I think it would be amiss of me to not start the conversation with your thoughts on the importance of a conversation like this for entrepreneurs, especially paying attention to their mental health, but also the mental health of their staff, their team, even their suppliers as it trickles down, right? So what are your thoughts on this?
I'm so happy that today is World Mental Health Day. And I think we've come so far in terms of talking about mental health. And the pandemic, and we must talk about the pandemic because I think the pandemic kind of propelled us even further into having conversations about how important mental health is. And my wish is that we don't stop, that we continue, because I think far too often mental health in the past was pushed as something, derogatory. You would hear things like, the statements like she mad or she crazy or she mental, and that's not the way we want to talk about mental health, because your brain can malfunction just as any other parts of your body. And therefore, why should we treat that any differently to how we treat cancer, diabetes, anything like that, where we really work to prevent it? Because we know what happens when you don't pay attention to your mental health. And I know we'll get into that a little later. But I wanted to say that I've had, both on a personal and professional level, quite a few experiences where people, entrepreneurs, as well as staff members, have not paid attention to their mental health to the detriment of themselves and to their families. And Trinidad, in particular, as a society, I think we have grown leaps and bounds. And I'm so happy we continue to have these conversations, because they're important to have in these spaces and as well in our workplaces as well.
Yeah, I think it's a conversation that continuously needs to happen, and it's figuring out how do we embed it in our way of life, right? Or in
Yeah.
the entrepreneur space, well, their way of life usually is their business, right?
Correct.
So how do you embed it in that aspect? And we talk about not just that whole importance of just managing your own mental health, but as an entrepreneur and you're leading a team, how are you looking at the mental health of your team members? How are you recognizing the signs? And I think I want to bring into the conversation there, what are some of the things as an entrepreneur you should be looking at as warning signs to say, okay, this is something that is affecting me and maybe affecting my output, right? And or this might be affecting my team members, and this is going to affect their output and recognizing those signs. So what are the things that entrepreneurs should be looking at, what in terms of themselves, but also in terms of their staff and team?
I want to focus first on themselves. Entrepreneurs, unlike employees, the typical employees, work a lot longer hours than the average employee. I go to work from 8 to 4 and I'm done. But an entrepreneur typically...
After Facebook Live at 7 p.m.,
At 7 p.m. on a random Tuesday. But no, definitely entrepreneurs tend to work sometimes 10, 12-hour days. And that sort of constant on-the-go pressure definitely can place a lot of stress on your body, can place a lot of stress on your mind. And I know as an adult, we typically feel tired all the time, but excessive fatigue and listlessness, a lack of creativity, poor performance, a lack of ability to concentrate, uneasiness in even dealing with normal situations on a daily basis. That anxiety. I'm not an entrepreneur, but definitely as a human being, you can tell when you're getting more irritable, especially when you haven't gotten enough sleep, when you haven't eaten properly, when your body typically is telling your mind, and your mind typically is telling your body, listen, there's no balance here. Something's wrong.
I've seen people argue with the copy machine when the copies didn't come out right.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
sometimes you don't realize it's happening, but you see it happening from you.
And sometimes, I remember I had an uncle who always used to say we walk a fine line between reality and fantasy. And it's true. And when he said fantasy there, he meant, going off on in a place where it's not rooted in reality. And sometimes there could be trigger moments that do that. So all the time you might be going along being irritable, being fussy, being frustrated. And as I said, you're feeling off, tired, listless, not performing properly in terms of your work and your business. And then something happens and you have a breakdown, because sometimes it's like little pebbles you're throwing into a river, and it just has a ripple effect. I think as entrepreneurs in particular, there's a high risk for burnout and mental burnout, and that has to be paid attention to as an entrepreneur, because as we all know, as an entrepreneur, if you don't work on your business, there's really nobody else a lot of times to work on it. That's your livelihood. That's what you do every single day to make profits and revenue and income. So if you don't take care of that and you burn yourself out, what's going to happen?
And you spoke about anxiety as well, right? And I think there's a certain anxiety of not working on your business that also comes part of being an entrepreneur, right? So even when someone says, you should take some time with your mental health, sometimes it's not that easy because you're now, did I send out that delivery? Did I send out that check? Did I pay that supplier? That's going through your head now. You're now dealing with that anxiety of, I should be doing something. That's part of it.
Yeah, and that's why it's important for you to understand that taking care of your mental health is not necessarily taking an hour out of your day to go and do yoga. It's not necessarily going to a spa and having a massage. It's not. Taking care of your mental health could be could be just stopping during the day and taking some deep breaths. 5 minutes and reset a little bit before you start again, because that a lot of our anxiety and those types of emotions are rooted in our breathing, and we need to understand how much our breathing plays that part. So sometimes it just requires you to stop for a minute, take a deep breath, pause. I have somebody, she always says, practice the pause. Pause. and let your brain, give your brain the opportunity to just reignite itself.
Yeah, and I think because that hampers your creativity, and I like how you said reignite yourself as part of it, because sometimes you realize that it ends up, if you're a creative entrepreneur, it's, difficult to even start thinking of, okay, what's my next story? What's that new animation? How am I going to make this graphic design look unique? Those aspects, and you find that the creativity becomes blocked, right? And I think it's understanding those warning signs that, hey, I need to take a break, right?
Yeah,
and have that trigger from there. So we want to work into a more positive role now in terms of what advice would you give an entrepreneur about taking care of their mental health?
First of all, make it a priority. Make it a priority to take care of your mental health. Every day as you go through your day, keep that at the back of your mind, because as I said, you don't want to go down the road of burnout. I have 3 quick tips that not just for entrepreneurs, but for staff members, for your staff members, for other team members, for even share it with your clients sometimes, because your clients sometimes might come in and they may not be having a good time. And sometimes, very often, you find the clients sometimes might want to offload on you and, vent a little bit, get a little support. And as an entrepreneur, you tend to want to foster that relationship, so you listen. So these 3 tips that I have are for me, 3 tips that I sort of hold on to. And the first one is, cultivate some healthy habits within your lifestyle. And healthy habits does not necessarily mean going to the gym. It means if it is that you are going to work a 10-hour day, you work a 10-hour day and then you take a break, right? Make sure and work a break into your time, and that time may be to go for a walk with your kids, to spend some time just reading, to watch your favorite show on Netflix. Take a little time during the day for you, for some healthy habits. It could be for cooking something that you saw on TikTok. Yes. But just pull yourself away a little bit from the business. And I will say this, yes, your business is your life, but without you, you have no business. The business does not exist. So your life is also your life. Sorry?
Your life is also your life.
Your life is also your life. And don't take it for granted. Don't take your mental health for granted. Pull aside a little bit. Park the car at the side of the road. Stop. And this is the figurative car. Park the figurative car at the side of the road. Stop and smell the roses a little bit. That's my first tip. My second tip is to practice positive self-talk. Entrepreneurs typically are very much prone to negative self-talk because you're faced with a lot of things during the course of the day. You might hear from your family telling you, why don't you just go and get an 8 to 4 job? You're running up and down, you don't have time for yourself, all of that. And sometimes that could take a toll on you as an entrepreneur. You have to practice positive self-talk. Tell yourself the things that you know will help to motivate you during the day. I can do this. I will win at this. I am a success. Simple things that you can say. It doesn't have to be any big set of affirmations. Just, I am a success. I will succeed. Even when you know that there's a big something in front of you to deal with, and you might not feel that you're able to deal with it. As I said, step back and go back to that positive self-talk. And the last point.
And before you move on to the last point, I think that second point is really crucial for entrepreneurs, especially at that beginning stages.
Oh yeah.
Right? When
it's easy to give up.
but even self, you're the only one really seeing the dream, right?
Yeah.
And no one else is understanding the dream. So unless you are the one giving you that positive thought and reinforcing that dream,
Yeah.
right, you realize that, hey, you're falling into a hole, right? And you're falling into negative thoughts. And it's
Mhm.
up to you to keep that dream going, keep that dream positive, and
Yeah.
keep your mindset positive as well.
Yeah. So definitely make sure that mind is always prepped for positive self-talk. And my last one is, it might sound a little off, but really it's just to organize your space. Organize your space where you work, organize your space. If you have a store, a shop, anything like that, organize your space. And I'll tell you something, back in school, way back in, I don't say way back, but some years ago in school,
5 years ago,
five
five
years
years
ago,
ago.
I remember us doing, we had somebody come in and do a talk about the importance of space and the use of space and the impact that it has on your mental well-being. And it's something that if you wish, you could do a little research on it. And they even spoke about how, like in the States, how the projects were built in a certain way for people to behave in a certain way. So, and the entire talk was about the impact of your space, your physical space, on your mental well-being and your mental health. I will always tell people, when you go into a messy space, it does not help with your thoughts. It's a distraction, So even if you have your desk in your office, at home, at the store, have it in a you can put if you want to just put a little candle to light, to get some nice a scented candle, just to get some nice scents going or anything like that. But keep your space neat, because your space impacts on your mind. When you can't find things, when you can't find things. For example, a client comes in and you're looking for a receipt and you don't have it organized, you're looking all over in boxes, all over the place, can't find it. Those little things, it might seem like little things, but they add up. So, and that's a very, very practical tip that I wanted to share. And I do want to encourage you to go on to Google, the University of Google, and look up the impact of a physical space on your mental health.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand that a cluster outside usually leads to a clustered inside. Right? And it's how do you go ahead.
And I even want to say, even for your staff, when your staff walk into your office, walk into your workspace, have it organized for them too, because it's not only for you, it's for them. And psychologically, it has an impact on them when they walk into a space that they can now step into immediately and start to function. Not a space where they have to now go and everything is haywire and chaos. That will impact the way they treat your clients. That will impact the way they treat you. That will impact the way they treat themselves and your business. So simple tip regarding your mental health.
I like that you brought in the staff impact there. So for entrepreneurs, sometimes you may have a small staff, but it's 2 or 3 of you all running the business from there. How do you now, I guess from the onset, or even from today, for those listening in, foster a safe space, having open conversations, mental well-being in the forefront? What do you do? How do you build that culture in your entrepreneurial space?
Well, I'll say this, having a background of HR and IR as well, I must say that once you're an employer, you have a duty of care. And that's, as you all may know, a term. It's a legal term. So you have a duty of care to your employees, to take care not only of their physical safety, but of their psychological safety. And that's something that you have to take seriously, right? You have to create an environment that they can feel comfortable to come into, not just, as I said, from a physical security standpoint, but from a mental standpoint, that there's no bullying or harassment, that they don't feel that, they're going to be ridiculed at any point in time, simple things like that, that there's somebody to listen if there is an issue. And I'm not talking about a personal issue even here, but a work issue. That is just from a standpoint where you have to provide that psychological and physical safety for your staff members. But more than that, more than a duty of care, more than that, is cultivating a culture of compassion, a culture of kindness, one where the human beings can thrive. I love to talk to people, and business people in particular, about how your environment impacts on your workers. And we have numerous examples of, both locally and internationally, of persons upset with their employers and taking it out either on themselves, their fellow employees, or even on the workers themselves, and what that can cause in terms of disruption to the business. So creating that culture of compassion is important. You want to, I will give you an example of what we do at my particular job to foster that culture of compassion, to also foster that awareness, mental health awareness. So every year from 2021, we have a mental health month or mental health week, which is normally in May. And it's not expensive, right? We just talk about mental health. And whether it is sharing information via our WhatsApp chats about different topics on mental health. We talk about happiness hacks. We talk about dopamine and oxytocin and all these happiness hormones, how to hack them. We talk about the impact of mental illness, little tips and tricks to get mental health as something entrenched in our daily way of life. And I could talk for myself here, and I could talk for some of my team members that definitely it has turned the stigma off. So now you would find that people will come to me or come to their manager and say, listen, and this is the situation, I'm not feeling myself. How can you what do I do? Do you have anything that any help, any resources that I can go to, anything like that? And that breaks this stigma. It also helps to make people understand that mental health is not taboo. It's not taboo.
And I think, so, we talked about the role and I guess the obligation of the entrepreneur, right, in terms of his leadership style. And I know last week we spoke about empathy and conversational intelligence. How does that play a role into this? I guess you may have to define what empathy is and conversational intelligence, right? Before persons go to the University of Google. But if you want to define it, but also talk about it, how you can utilize it as a leadership style for an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so definitely empathy. I'll start with that because I know last week we spoke at length about empathy. And empathy, I put it very simply, empathy is just putting yourself in the other person's shoes and trying to understand what they may be going through. And that is empathy in its simplest format. Conversational intelligence, which is a skill that I think as we grow as entrepreneurs becomes a lot more vital to how you operate as a leader. It's a real nice tool to have in your pocket. And it's all about understanding the impact of your conversations, your daily conversations on the business, on your employees, and being aware even before you start to talk of what is your intent? What is the end result you want from your conversations? I could go on and on about conversational intelligence, but it's really learning to use your conversations as a medium to enhance your leadership role and shine a light on conversation. So for me, these two are so well suited together. They marry well in terms of a modern leader. And I will say this: as a leader, you are managing, directing, coordinating, planning for a team, with a team, understanding that each member of that team has different needs and maybe going through different experiences. And it can't be ignored because it will have an impact on your business. So you have to use that empathy and use that conversational intelligence to create a nice, and I said it last week, a nice ecosystem whereby people feel supported, people feel listened to, people feel that they're understood with, and that their boss is not somebody who they come to them with a problem, or they can't come to them with a problem, can't come to them with an issue, and it will be solved or heard, whether it's a professional issue, whether it's a work issue, whether it is a personal issue. I use a lot of empathy in my own workplace because I do have a strong inclination to understanding the impact of it. And I've seen me use empathy, and it helped a lot of people. I'll just give a real quick story here. I had a staff member who was going through a very tough time with her significant other, and it was impacting on her work. And she was not a troublemaker, right? She's a very good worker. But this situation with her significant other really impacted in terms of not coming to work with a bruise and all of that. And instead of just looking at her and saying, listen, this can't be dealt with, deal with your situation. We can't have this going on. The work is suffering, It was more of, I'm calling not her real name, Jane. I'm seeing some things here that are concerning. Tell me a little bit. You don't have to go into detail. Tell me a little bit about what's happening. How can I help? There's a show on Netflix called New Amsterdam, and the doctor, he always starts with, how can I help? A simple.
It's better than Dr. House.
4 words. How can I help? And this young lady, I was able to guide her in a way where she was able to come out of that situation and really triumph and get her life back together. But if I did not approach it from a place of empathy, and I just approach it from a place of, you're not performing, you're not and get your act together, it may have turned into something totally different for her and for the organization.
I always tell persons, you never know what's happening with someone. Sometimes your fire is not their fire, right? In terms of something is going on with them. I know you need your stuff urgently done, but also see if they're okay with doing it, right? And you may just need to check in, right? Whether it's a weekly check, every other week, at least once a month, check in with your team. Ask them, how is everything going? How can I help? And as an entrepreneur, that's basically a job description. Once you get team members, I always tell persons that role that you had from before, the job description becomes other. Right? Right. So definitely. You don't have an HR department, you're the HR department. So you understand that your role is other. So I mean, Ava, I want to end up the conversation, but before I end up, what's one key thing that you want our listeners to take away from this conversation?
There's more than one, but definitely I'll just say one. But be kind. It's two words that I just want to leave you with. Be kind. And make mental health. Yes, this is a nice that I wanted to show it. This drawing. Why should you be kind to people? This is the big circle in someone's life, and what you, the entrepreneur, know about it is just that dot. Right? As business leaders, sometimes we only know that dot, and we think that that dot is it. That's not it. There are many other things that could be possibly going on, that definitely are going on in somebody's life, and you want to be kind. And I'll just end by saying this: we live in a society where everywhere you turn, there's some manner of stress. Whether it is crime, whether it is food prices, we know the whole thing already. Why add to that? Why add to it? No. Let your workplace be somewhere where on a Monday morning, somebody's excited to come to that space. They want to be there.
And the road to your workplace be the yellow brick road, right? So, I mean, we've had the end of that conversation there, folks, and thank you for joining us. Avalene, thank you for your insights, tips, I guess your thoughts as well on the subject matter. And with that, folks, that's the end of our conversation tonight. Look out for the other conversation and what else we have going on. As always, it's been real. It's been nice. It's been real nice. We'll see you all next time. Take care.